Hurricane warnings are issued along the Texas coastline. Good evening, I'm Mike Nasel with this Friday night update on the 11 p.m. advisory on Beryl. We have watched this system move from the central Atlantic as a Category 4 hurricane through the southern Windward Islands, causing devastation, becoming only the second Category 5 hurricane in the month of July on record, and then raking the south coast of Jamaica as a Category 4, buffeting the islands of the Caymans, and then making landfall as a Category 2 earlier on Friday along the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. It is now a tropical storm moving into the Gulf of Mexico, forecast to become a potent hurricane before making landfall along the middle or upper Texas coastline. Here's the latest on Tropical Storm Beryl as of 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Central, Friday night. Beryl was at 21.7 north, 90.2 west. Winds are 60 miles per hour. The pressure about 998 millibars. So it has weakened dramatically as it has crossed land, and it is still moving west-northwest at 13. And that motion should continue with a gradual bend to the northwest and then eventually the north, making landfall sometime probably Monday morning to Monday afternoon along the Texas coastline. Now, if it takes the southern edge of this cone, it's inland quicker, has less time to strengthen, and it will make landfall probably in northern Mexico Sunday night. If it takes the right edge of this cone, it's over water much longer and has time to become a hurricane, or even a stronger hurricane, and makes landfall closer to the Louisiana border, and that would be sometime late Monday night. So we have this 24-hour window because of the position of the Texas coast, the way it slopes like that. Where the storm makes landfall will depend a lot on how strong it is, and the timing will differ. Now, we do have a hurricane watch from St. Louis past Texas all the way down to northern Mexico. That will likely be changed to a hurricane warning, and don't be surprised if it's extended further eastward, or at least a hurricane watch would be, into areas of Louisiana if this system ends up bending further north than we want, or even northeast ahead of that troughiness. We might see those hurricane watches and warnings issued further to the east. Here is the latest infrared satellite imagery, and again, the center of circulation is tilted, so it took a beating. It's down in this area here, and it's over water now. So as it pulls away, it should take time to recover, but once it does, it should become a hurricane, and the forecast right now brings it up to about 90 miles per hour along the Texas coast, as it should strengthen slowly and then more steadily as it heads towards the coastline. But again, you guys always have to be ready for something potentially stronger, and we know from what this did in the Caribbean, Beryl is quite the hurricane and quite a tenacious storm. Again, it's still small, but tropical storm force winds do extend out 105 miles from the center. So the tropical storm force winds extend out, and that's going to kick up the surf. Be on alert for rip currents along the Gulf Coast anywhere where the water is kicked up by Beryl. Now, as far as the upper level winds, the environment should be very favorable for strengthening. The waters are warm and the wind shear is decreasing. This map shows it better. So we're going to have a pretty good environment for intensification. The question is, with the beating it took crossing the Yucatan, can it restructure itself and reorganize? That's the big question. And if it does, as a tightly coiled system, the rate of intensification could then increase. And that's why it should be a tropical storm for a while, then a hurricane, and then start to strengthen a little bit more rapidly, or steadily at the very least, as it heads towards Texas. Now, here's the 18Z European models. We'll get the 0Z out soon, but as of 18Z, they are taking this system straight into northern Texas, the upper Texas coast, the north coast of coastline of Texas, even some into western Louisiana. So again, there's a chance that this could end up bending a little bit further to the northeast than we like. Right now, it does show a landfall on the upper Texas coast. The GFS seems to show a little bit further west with the mid to upper Texas coast, but they all seem to be zeroing in on Texas, not Mexico. So while northern Mexico is under that hurricane watch, and you guys have to be on alert, it looks like the United States coastline of Texas is definitely more at risk of a direct landfall right now. This is the H-Wharf model as of 18Z. It takes the system back up to hurricane strength, Category 1, and makes it a strong hurricane of about 90 miles per hour at landfall on Monday. And that's 66 hours from now. And that's pretty much what the Hurricane Center is showing, about 80 knots, which is 90 miles per hour, right on the threshold of Category 2. So again, that would be a wallop for mid-Texas and early to mid-July. I mean, you don't normally get July landfalls. I know Hurricane Claudette hit Port O'Connor, Texas, as a 90-mile-an-hour Category 1 in 2003. So that was the year I turned 15. So I do remember tracking it. That was a long-tracked Caribbean storm, but it was never a hurricane until it really got into the Gulf. Briefly in the Caribbean, it was a Category 1. This was a monstrous Category 5 over the Caribbean. Beryl is a much different system than what we dealt with Claudette in 2003, for any of those people who were tracking back in 2003 like I was. So this is the forecast point from the National Hurricane Center. This is where they're expecting it Monday morning as of 11 p.m. Friday night, and it should be about 90 miles an hour, so a high-end Category 1, so that would put it very close to North Padre Island, Port Aransas, Port O'Connor, Matagorda Bay, and Rockport and Corpus. So this stretch of coast, but again, if it's moving in this direction, then you would be on the right front quadrant further north towards areas there of Matagorda, Sargent, Freeport. So again, anywhere along the coastline needs to be going through your hurricane checklist, make sure prescriptions are filled, make sure you get money out of the ATM so you have some cash on you, and listen to local officials about any low-lying evacuations that may take place, especially if this tropical storm organizes back into a hurricane faster than we think it might. Rainfall is going to be a threat. 6, 8, 10, 12 inches along the coastline and inland as the system weakens and moves in. The rainfall will weaken, but not enough to not give 4 to 6 inches to areas here near Dallas, Fort Worth, and Shreveport. That will cause a flood risk, a slight flood risk for areas there from Brownsville to Lake Charles, from Shreveport to San Antonio. You guys will have a flood risk, as we see with most landfalling tropical cyclones. The storm surge is going to be a factor, 2 to 4 feet here near Baffin Bay, but then 3 to 5 from Corpus all the way over to San Luis Pass, and then 2 to 4 feet here near Galveston. Again, it's going to depend on the angle of approach. If it's a hurricane by then, makes landfall near Matagorda Bay, the right front quadrant where you have the onshore winds would be where the highest surge is. And it also depends on how large it is. Beryl has been a very tiny hurricane for most of its existence. So that's good news and bad news. The good news would be maybe if it's a tiny hurricane, the winds wouldn't extend out very far, and any storm surge would be more localized, more tighter, less expansive. The bad news is tiny storms could strengthen up really quickly, and we don't want it to tighten up into a stronger hurricane before landfall. Again, we're going to continue to watch it over the next 24, 48, 72 hours. So you have the weekend. It's Friday night. So you have through this weekend to prepare along the Texas coast. I would say anywhere from, let's say, intercoastal city, Louisiana, all the way down to Tampico. You guys watch it very carefully there as the tropical storm moves back out into the Gulf of Mexico. We'll be watching little blow-ups of convection like this to see if Beryl could catch her breath again and how strong she may get by the time she makes landfall in the Texas area. So again, I'm Mike Naso with continuing video coverage of long-tracked Beryl, a July hurricane that was a Category 5, devastated the Windward Islands, caused a lot of problems on the south coast of Jamaica, slammed into the Yucatan Peninsula, and is now taking aim at the western Gulf Coast. I will talk to you next time with more on Beryl.